This is a scene that I've lit using only small COB video lights, which despite their compact size have great capability. I have one Zhiyun X100 bouncing off a sheet of fabric in front of me here on a C-stand, and an X100 RGB, which is the new one, behind me throwing some light at this bookcase, kind of simulating as if it was coming from the warm lamp there. And that's it, just two little lights that can be run on battery power. So I'm Hashem if you're new, welcome to the channel, thanks for joining. Zhiyun sent me their latest X100 light, which is the RGB edition co-designed with Cam Mackey. He's a filmmaker whose YouTube channel I'd already been following, so it was cool to see this new collaboration, and we kind of expected an RGB version to come out for the X100. But besides that RGB factor, the new X100 introduces a different design aesthetic. It adds the reflector lens attachment as standard, which is significant, we'll talk about that later, and additional modifiers like the magnetic barn doors attachment. So with 100 watts of power and all these new features, it's a little powerhouse of a light. But in this video, I wanted to help you figure out if it's the right one for you. So obviously we've got the small form factor, which is only 385 grams weight. You've got plenty of power output, the RGB, the green magenta control is a new thing on this latest version as well. And we've still got the Bluetooth app connectivity for wireless control and versatile power options. So there's a lot of utility there. But let's talk a little bit about the modifiers and whether they'd be useful for you, because that might affect which kit you would go for. The standard and pro kit for this X100 RGB both include that little reflector lens attachment instead of a traditional reflector dish, which would usually be a mini reflector dish. The main advantage of this lens is that it does a better job of redirecting and focusing the light, effectively giving you more brightness at the same power level. The Pro Kit for the X100 RGB comes with the 4-leaf barn door attachment as well, which snaps on magnetically, making it really convenient to decide to use it if you want. This barn doors attachment allows you to further control the light and redirect it and controlling unwanted spill, for example, like I've done on the bookcase here, controlling it and restricting it just to the case without spilling out onto the walls. So you can find other ways that you'd use it, but that's just one example. So essentially it lets you better be able to shape the light to suit the scene that you're shooting. In the Pro Kit, you also get the mini softbox with an optional grid, the Bowens mount adapter, and that means you can use any Bowens mount light modifier, including larger ones. So the reflector lens and barn doors combination is probably the most useful in my opinion, making the Pro Kit worth it for the majority of shooters. So given everything that I've gone over, who would I say this light is for? First and foremost, someone who needs portability. If you travel, shoot outdoors, run and gun, and you just can't bring or use heavier kit. Secondly, for someone who wants something lightweight and small, but with plenty of power. So for example, if you need to mount the light in tricky positions, shooting in tight spaces like cars or small rooms, or for doing a lot of hand holding, like if you're doing a portrait shoot and you're having your assistant move around with the light or something like that. Another use case scenario would be for a supplementary piece for larger lighting kits. So you might have a larger key light, but you want something additional for fill, for the hair light or kicker, or attaching for the upcoming spotlight attachment, which I'll talk about more later. Or maybe just using it to dial in the ambient light in backgrounds like I've done in this scene, and other similar uses where it just serves as a supplemental light to an existing kit. So for example, I used it to dial in the ambient light of the bathroom in the background of a scene that I was shooting to make it look like those old school fluorescent lights when I actually have tungsten lights in the room. And with the barn doors, I could make sure it wasn't spilling out of the door and make it seem like it was bouncing off the ceiling as if it was coming from a natural fluorescent tube. Another use case is for serious shooters who just don't want to bother setting up bigger lights. Sometimes it's not justified to rig up larger, heavier lights, and you can still just bounce these off a sheet like I'm doing here. You can shoot it through some diffusion. You can use the small softboxes or the Bowens mount adapter for larger modifiers. The next and last use case or advantage is for that versatility of the different power options. So whether you want to be able to run it on AC power, the grip battery, or you have power banks with PD, USB, or V-mount batteries and so on. So that's my opinion on who this light is best for, or at least some ideal use case scenarios. But is it worth the price? Now, the regular X100 RGB sells for $269 US, which includes the reflector lens and AC power adapter. This is a good option if you know you won't be needing a battery or you're not using it much on the go. especially for someone who maybe is just doing YouTube or other home filmmaking studio work. Or you have an existing kit and you're just adding additional ones and you don't need the combo for every additional unit. Now, the Pro kit, however, sells for $449 US, but that comes with the carry case, the grip battery, the AC adapter again, the PD USB cable, reflector lens once again, but also the barn doors in this kit. It's also bundled with a mini softbox and the Bowens mount adapter. This will probably be the more popular option since I think most people could benefit from the battery and the barn doors especially. And with all that extra stuff, you get quite a lot of value factored in. Overall, I do think it's quite worth it if you fall into at least one or two of my recommended use case categories. It's not priced too differently to similar competing units out on the market, and yet it offers certain advantages. Speaking of that, some other pros and cons worth mentioning, we'll go through them as a list. The first one that I found was that the fan noise is quiet. I cannot hear it at all right now, especially when you're running it at lower to medium powers, and especially compared to other similar small lights on the market. The next pro is that the light quality is great. You've got high CRI, TLCI ratings and so on, but more importantly, you've got green magenta control now, which you didn't have on the previous X100, which is great for dialing things in or if you're struggling with different color casts on competing light sources. Next is that the controls are tactile and easy to use, as is the Bluetooth app. I'm personally a sucker for clicky dials and I love the way these X100s operate. The next pro is that these are especially good for using with other Zhiyun lights and grouping them together and then controlling them all remotely through the app. The last pro that I have is that the battery life is quite good. You get at least half an hour when you're running it at full power, which I doubt most people will be using. So you get well more than half an hour if you're running it at reasonable power levels. Now, going through some cons, firstly, it would be nice if it had a light stand attachment included, perhaps like a removable handle that doubles as a light stand attachment, or light stand adapter basically, like I've seen on other lights. But you can, I guess, just buy your own and use that. Otherwise, you're restricted to using the tripod socket. The good thing is there are two tripod sockets if you want to have the battery, for example, and center the weight close to the battery. My next con is that the design might not be for everyone. I quite like the look of it, including the colorway and the feel of the fake leather, but I worry that it would wear out after a few years and wear out quicker basically than a unit that was just finished with metal. But again, I'm not too sure about that, and your mileage might vary with this one. The next con I have with the X100 RGB is that it's more expensive than some competing options on the market, but there are going to be trade-offs in quality, functionality, or fan noise, and so on. So my main use is for at-home and YouTube work like this, or shooting product stuff and B-roll, but also for taking along to certain client jobs. It's amazing how far these little devices have come, and that for that level of power, you used to have to be restricted to much larger lights. For example, I can now just chuck a 100-watt light in my camera bag and take it along to a corporate client job just in case I need it, or to a wedding, for example, and it's barely noticeable in the bag. So for me, I can easily recommend any of these Molus X100 series lights, including the new X100 RGB. My next plan for it is to use it during a portrait shoot on film and take advantage of the RGB mode a little bit more and the various modifiers, including the new spotlight attachment, which either would have come out by the time I post this or is yet to come out. I'll do a video on that, which will be posted to my film photography channel, Pushing Film, so subscribe over there if you want to watch that when it's ready. Otherwise, if you want more info about the Molus X100 RGB Cam Mackie edition, I'm going to leave a link in the description and any discount codes that I can get access to pass on to you. Look out for my future videos using this light, or leave a question in the comments and I'll see if I can answer. For now, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.